would hear if
Are
that
you
had any.
hearing an echo here? Is there
No,
an echo?
no,
No. Do you
no,
hear an echo back here?
no. But when you're closer to it's much more.
I'm
Your
very punchy. I'm
is
very
yours
punchy, so I'll sit back.
is yours a baritone voice?
Yeah, I'm a baritone, and I'm very like, it's the always think hit, but I do it with my voice too. I'm very like, and I just got through teaching a kids class, so they're all
Uh-huh.
over the place, and I'm like, bam, bam, bam. It's kind of my personality anyway.
I
So
wish I
I'll try to
I
stay
wish I
back.
had a voice like yours. I think your type of voice is much more suited to being to broadcasting.
Well, thank you. We'll see about that.
but
Hopefully, it's a fun show.
but you're I mean, we could say that you're classically trained for performance, aren't you?
I am actually classically trained for performance. I actually have a theater degree from UCLA, which does kind of tie into my whole story of martial arts and how I got here
Yeah.
from there, which is a really kind of
You know,
insane.
we're gonna cover all of that, but just like
Yeah.
you, I'm probably gonna go at it like this.
Oh, it's totally fine. I'm probably gonna have my cat jump up here at some point, so I'll have a cat on my
Okay.
lap.
That
Are we on right now? Or are we about to
Yeah.
go? Oh,
Nope,
we're on.
we're
Okay, good.
live. Yeah, we're live.
I
That
thought I saw
use
the countdown and then I did it.
Yeah.
So your show. Thanks for having me. Let's. What do you want to know?
Okay. UCLA. That place is a haven for martial artists.
Yeah, but they're hidden away. It's not like it's the martial arts, or at least in my experience. I mean, this was 24 years, 24 years ago, 25 years ago. I graduated.
Okay.
Um,
But I mean in terms of like programs that are offered.
No, not
No?
that I experienced. So mine was very
Hmm.
weird. I knew a bunch of people. So I actually started at the University of Oklahoma,
Right.
and then I did this 6 year bachelor, go to two universities, and kind of goof off because I didn't know what I was going to do, and I thought if I'm going to do it, I'm gonna try it now. Like this is the time to do it, and it was very life altering for me. But so I was at OU, and then I transferred. I changed majors, and then I auditioned, got into UCLA, and it comes about in a really weird way. So I was in the theater program there, and I was doing a lot of movement, and I was sort of the protege for that time under a guy named Tom Orth.
Right.
And then I got to my last quarter. So they're on a quarter system. I get to my last quarter, and again, we're auditioning for classes. And there's a great stage combat class. UCLA is one of the premier programs in the nation for the theater program, the television and film. They're just a really amazing school.
Hmm.
And I auditioned for this, and I didn't get in. And I went to the professor, and I was like, "Hey, I really want to come in." He's like, "Well, it's just about sizing, putting just different bodies together for what we're kind of looking to do in the class." And he said, you're fine. Just take it next quarter." And I was like, "I don't have a next quarter." And he said, "Oh, well, come on in then. You're fine. Come on in." And the professor is Ed Monahan. And
Right.
literally, that sparked me into everything really big martial arts that I've done. I wrestled in high school, and then I did some fooling around with some Kempo, some Muay Thai. I messed around with some Taekwondo guys when I was at University of Oklahoma. But then did stage combat with Ed. And then afterwards, in January of '98, I think, I went to Combative Arts Academy in Beverly Hills, and LA fun driving. You've been in there, you know how much fun
Oh
that
yeah.
is. I was
Yeah.
in Santa Monica
Oh
and
God.
driving to Beverly Hills, which was about 45-minute drive one way through traffic to get to class. So I just stay at class,
Yeah.
and so I got in with Ed Monahan, and that got me into everybody. Like
Okay.
I trained with everybody through him.
Right. So usually at the end of the dialogue, I ask people who I should get on the program. So Ed
Good Ed.
Monahan's name, yeah,
Good
right.
Ed.
His name has come
Ed's
up.
fantastic. He knows so many people.
Yeah.
And just yeah, I know we cut to the very end here, but do you want to get somebody on there who's just a pretty pretty well-rounded, awesome martial artist. I would really highly recommend Ed Monahan.
Yeah. Okay. But now tell me, what exactly is stage combat?
It is all the stuff that we want to not do in all the it's the irony of Bruce Lee, and it sort of gives me a different eye for a lot of the people out there in the world. Movie actor Bruce Lee and martial artist fighter Bruce Lee are two different people, and the main thing is the telegraph. In stage combat, Dwight, you and I are going to do it. It's the old John Wayne. Here's the old punch coming in. I want to know when the punch is going. You want to know when the punch is coming, so you can do your cool reaction, and like, oh, look, you hit me, and it's so tough. And we want the camera to see it, or the audience to see it, whatever it is, so
Right.
that they can react to it. In a fight, at least in my experience, no, you don't want anybody to see it. You want everything to be just invisible,
Hmm.
and nothing is there. So, and for me, I was again working with Ed at UCLA. And later I became an instructor underneath him, and he opened a lot of doors for me. And I went back and actually taught at UCLA. And it's about you know safety, repeatability, and selling it. So it's less
Right.
about hurting someone, but it is using the full body, and it's a great big telegraphic motion so that everybody can see it, namely your partner. Um, and Ed again would be he's got some great stories about that of he's got a great Romeo and Juliet story about, and I'll let him tell it because it's pretty awesome. He always tells
Yeah.
that story to us. It's not getting caught up in the moment. You're really, it's like a dance. Stage combat is very
Right.
much so like that. So if you're doing it, you're choreographing. And you know how many great actors are out there who are like, I don't know how to fight. They're like, I don't know. There's a lot of really great action stars out there. Chow Yun Fat is a great example of that. He's known as this great action hero guy. He's like, I don't know how to fight.
Right.
There's other guys who have trained in martial arts, but they just show up, they
Yeah.
practice really hard,
Yeah.
and they learn from
What
professionals.
what do you think of that? Because now we have take Keanu Reeves, who
Yeah.
trains for fighting, right? For movie fighting, I should
Movie
say.
fighting.
Yes. I'm
I
sorry. Right.
love, and do you know those guys? So what's his name who directed the John Wick movies was,
Oh, Chad Stahelski.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ed knows him. He knows all those guys.
Hmm.
I never met him, but I knew Mike McCoctus, who
Yeah.
worked with him.
I know Mike.
Mike was really great. So Ed brought in a lot of those guys from the Inosanto Academy.
Right.
That would have been 99, 2000,
Hmm.
2001. Those guys were coming in, and Mike was one of those. I think that was right before Matrix 2 and 3 came out, because
Okay.
Mike went over to do that. I think it was we touched base a couple of times. I haven't talked to him in 20 years,
Yeah.
but I remember he was really instrumental for me, just as a really cool guy coming in and showing us some cool stuff. I think I it's two sides. One, I freaking love the movies. I love coming
Right.
into those movies. I love sitting in like the Bourne movies, the John Wick movies, just because you and I can pick them apart and be like, well, that's total fantasy. That'll never happen. Well, that was a really cool move. I know the real version of that,
Right.
and and I like that. I like coming in and seeing those things and enjoying them. And I think a lot of people get into it. It's the same thing with Bruce Lee, and same thing for a lot of other people who get into martial arts. They get inspired. They go see a movie, and it's like, wow, that was really cool.
Right.
I'm gonna go figure that out. I'm gonna go
Hmm.
train with that and play with it, and maybe learn the real thing. I train with a guy named Chadwick Minge, does traditional Japanese taijutsu, and he said, a lot of guys come in and they're like, I want to be a ninja, because they saw a ninja movie, and I want to be a ninja, and then they get in, and they have this movie fantasy, but then they start training, and he said they would keep training. And same thing, I get people come in, oh, Bruce Lee,
Right.
and then they have the movie idea. I'm like, Bruce had a cobra and a dart, in the movie. It's not realistic. He's telling a story with it, and it's really,
Right.
it's cool, but it's cool like Citizen Kane is cool. If you ever watched Citizen Kane,
Hmm.
it's lauded as this most amazing movie. really not that great. It's not, in my mind, it's not a great movie, but it was known because it's the first movie did transitions,
Yeah.
and instead of just like fade to black and then
Yeah.
transition. Um, so, all of Bruce's movies, to a certain point, I like them, but I like them as the kid who I grew up as, who would watch Saturday morning cartoons. I would then watch Godzilla, and then it was Kung Fu theater, and
Mhm.
then I would go. We lived in the country, so I go in the woods next to my house, and I would pick up stick, and I was Kung Fu master for however long I could keep going,
Right.
and having a really great time with it. Just I
But
think
that's interesting. That's interesting because with your see, has anybody ever asked you for your opinion then on with your background in stage combat, in
mhm.
theater, in dance? Has anybody ever asked you then, okay, so break down Bruce Lee the actor and then Bruce Lee the martial artist?
No, but that might be a fun thing to do.
Oh, we'll do it right
Um,
now.
we can do it right now. One of the things, I had this outlook all the time, and when I train with when we haven't gotten to him yet, but it's kind of important, is Jerry Poteet.
Mhm.
And I remember I would come in with questions all the time. I was always questions. I walked in, we'd shake hands, hug, hey, how you be, and then he's like, okay, what do you got? Because I would always have questions. I mean,
Yeah.
my phone, I would be training someone, and I'd stop and type in a question, and my students and my private students, they're like, all right, we'll just hold on a second, because Joel's gonna write something in there, and then he'll ask Sifu Jerry, and then we'll find out about it next week when we train. And which was true. But I would come in, and I remember one of the questions I had. I was like, all the film of Bruce when he's doing it, because it's not like today where you can grab your phone and just video
Right.
stuff. And like,
Yeah.
I can do 4K on my phone, and everybody's got these super. People didn't have that back then. Crap, I didn't have that when I was a kid, and so it was useful. But according to Jerry Poteet, all of that stuff was movie stuff. That was him playing with movie stuff. So when you see him kicking in there now, would he do that in a fight? I don't know. I never met the man, so I don't know what Bruce Lee would do. I can't speak to that, but I can say, according to Jerry, and according to what I see, and
Mhm.
is my background, it is for movies. Like he does a big side kick in going in there, or at least he does in the alley scene, and uh, yeah, I think a lot of it is there, but it's also cultivating how much do you need to go this big in a movement
Right.
to refine back into something smaller that you might actually apply. I don't know. There might be better people who can do that. I don't really go into. It's really an interesting thing for me. They're very separate in my mind,
Mhm.
anyway. And there's almost three people, um, maybe even four. There's the myth is the kid who didn't know anything. Like I didn't know Jeet Kune Do. I didn't know
Right.
crap about anything. I was a dumb
Right.
kid from rural Oklahoma who watched kung fu theater. Um, there's the mystique of like, is it which one's Bruce Lee? Because there was a whole thing of they were after he died, they put a whole bunch of kids up, a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
Well, that's my generation. I mean, I was born 5 days before Bruce Lee died. So it's a really weird kind of dynamic for me. So there's the myth. I really grew up with a lot of the myth, and um, then discovered more of it later. Then there's Bruce Lee, the movie star, who he is as this iconic person who pushed his action movies out there, and it just became you know this name, this brand.
Mhm.
Then there's the founder of Jeet Kune Do, which was something special to me, and I think for me that's the one that's the biggest key for me right now. That's the one
Oh,
that's like
sure.
the brightest in my
Yeah.
book. Is
Yeah.
he's the founder, and I always pay homage to him. And it's interesting for me to look at as I continue to train, as I continue to grow and explore movement. I really go back and I go, wow, man, he had some really good. Sorry, I was gonna. There might be a few f bombs or things on here, so I apologize in advance for it. But he had some really good shit. Like he understood stuff,
Yeah.
and I don't know if he was able to express it to his students necessarily or to other people, but what he was able to intuit as an individual, as an athlete, as a martial artist was really high level.
Yeah.
And the world is a poorer place for not having him be able to
Yeah.
explore further.
Yeah.
I mean, he
That's
died at 32. I'm
right.
I'm 48. Dwight, how old are you? Like,
I'm
do you
older
remember
than
the
you.
32-year-old kid that we were? Like, I wasn't that. I didn't know this much stuff at
Right.
32. Like,
Yeah.
my head was firmly up my rear side.
Yeah. I was really interested in hearing in getting your take on that though. As I was reading your bio, I thought, well, he'll be able to comment on Bruce Lee's theatrical athleticism or
He was really
athletic
cool. I've actually
theatricality.
slowed down. I think one of the things is the iconic, the thing he does with Bob Wall,
Uh-huh.
and he's sitting in there. And I actually went back and slowed it down. It was really pretty cool. He's actually grabbing Bob Wall and taking him through the choreography of that. And the other thing is, I was always told Bruce. The story I got was Bruce came into the original producers back in the Kato days with the Green Hornet, and came in and was like, bah, 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 bah. And everybody was like, well, I'm sure that was great, but we didn't see anything. So he started putting in stops, and he
Right.
really had an impact with that, of putting in the stops of that pose, and very iconic,
Yeah.
and the sound effects and everything of making that. And so he really came back and started selling it. And maybe he was the first person, but he wasn't the first person, but he did it really, really well of selling those moments to an audience. And I mean, that's why he's in the movie world, it's almost 50 years later. And for some of
Hmm.
his movies, it is 50 years later. And the people are still talking about it. That's James Dean, Elvis Presley kind of iconic
Right. Yeah.
lore.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he came and did it. But also in there, I go, look, you don't understand how fast that guy was, how efficient, how slick he was. Go back and watch him do a Pac Sal. Now it's posed, it's from reference point. He's this.
But
Wow, it's
still
slick.
incredible.
It's
Yeah.
slick. I challenge everybody to go back and find a clip of that and then put it on slow mo and
Right.
see. Like, everybody's, I'm super fast. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, go look at Bruce. Like, that's
Yeah.
in a movie where he's trying to tell people a story, where he's saying, I'm going to
Right.
slow it down so you can actually see me do it.
Yeah.
And he's still faster than
Yeah.
99.9% of us.
I've said to people before, have you ever seen, there's a still shot of that Paxao to back fist. Both his feet are off the ground.
Mm-hmm. He's super, it's just, bam, it's just so, he's
Right.
so explosive
Yeah.
that it's unreal. And sometimes I forget, like, I'm going through the information. Sometimes I go back and I look at him and I'm like, crap, I gotta go to work. And I have to go back and do some of that. Now, he was still, he was in the peak of that athleticism.
Hmm.
Um, it being in his early 30s when he was doing all this stuff, or late 20s, and really speed and fast. And it's like, yeah, use it. And Sifu Jerry would always talk about, Bruce understood he had it right now. If you've got speed, use it. And I've
Right.
had some students who are way faster than me. Their fast twitch is just through the roof. But you have to work towards that efficiency and that economy of motion so you refine stuff. And I had a great example of this. I had a student, unfortunately, he's passed away now, named Frank, who came up to Canada and visited me. He was one of my students from Oklahoma. He came up to visit me, and he had just been through a whole chemo cycle. He's in his 50s. He had pancreatic cancer. They took his whole pancreas out, a whole thing. Like, I mean,
Wow.
first off, he's in his 50s. He came up here and he was working in the room with guys in their 20s and 30s who were slick and fast. And we were doing footwork, just clapping out footwork, just boom, boom. And Frank was faster than everybody else because he'd just
Huh.
been doing it. He'd been doing it longer and he was just quicker.
Right.
And that's what we got to do. How do you beat someone who's faster than you? Well, you borrow their speed. How do you beat someone who is bigger than you? You borrow their size. How do you beat someone who's stronger than you? You borrow their strength.
What do you mean by
And
that? That's an interesting concept.
so that's integrated into everything that we did. And sometimes it's been it's been when I leave. 11 years ago, I left LA. Um, so Seafood Jerry and I would have this in all of our conversations. Everything was integrated into it. There's some stuff that I don't know if I just learned because that was part of him and it's
Yeah.
just osmosis of in the moment, or if he specifically told me some of this stuff. But I was always bigger, faster, stronger than him. Always. When I trained with him from 2000, probably from 2006 to 2010, I was always bigger, faster, stronger than him. But he was always able to borrow my size, strength, and speed because he was more efficient. So it was his equations of a hit.
Mm.
So a lot of people do hit dynamic and they throw a punch. I'm gonna throw a punch, yeah, and then it's decelerating as it goes to the target. I want to hit accelerating to the target so that the bam and all the explosion, you're accelerating as you hit the contact point. But then to add in the biophysics of it, the additional equation to that is I want to factor in your mechanics as well. So I want to be accelerating towards you, and I want to try to hit you as you're accelerating towards me. So as we go this way, I'm going to borrow your size and strength and speed. So if you're throwing a punch at me and you've got all of your dynamic coming towards me, and then you time that and you move it off with a simple angle to catch me with the timing of it as I'm moving in. That's a great thing about the intercept, and people don't think about it, is if I'm punching at you full force,
Yeah.
and then you slip off of that with a simple angle attack, you're factoring in your mass and your speed and your mechanics, but you're also factoring in mine. So my contact point where your fist touches, my throat or my nose or wherever you're going to hit me, I'm actually moving towards you with that same hit dynamic. So I'm coming in full power here, you're coming in full power there, but the contact point isn't my fist to your face, it's your fist to my face. I'm still moving forward, or my throat, or whatever it happens to be. So it's a different equation you're factoring in. And he would do this to me all the time we were training. I mean, all the time we're training, just move, and it's there.
Yeah.
And to get to that level, you have to have the sensitivity and awareness of it, how to shape kinetic energy.
Yeah.
I always say it's hit energy. It's
It,
clapping hands.
it,
It's the
the
same thing.
title of his wasn't the title of his Jeet Kune Do books Secrets of Jeet Kune Do?
It was. I have those. The funny thing is when I first started training with him, that's where we kind of started, and
Okay.
then we went into it. It's always it's tough because you and I have been in the game, and so many other people have been in the game. It's marketing it, and you have to get people who are like, oh, I'm excited, let's come in.
Hmm.
But then it's like, okay, well, here's what we're really doing. You know,
Right.
what's on
Yeah,
the
but
billboard and
yeah,
what's in the floor. Is
but
it
what you
two
just
things?
described to me, if that's something that came from him, I've never heard it described that way before. So it is secret. You,
Yeah, it is. I guess it is secret.
you
But
know?
it was part of everything that we did.
Right.
He
Did you guys ever discuss how he came to these things? Because I get the sense that they were not given to him, that he developed them.
So this is my take, and I'm gonna preface this with saying that Jerry Poteet would never ever say this. I think he moved quite a bit in a lot of things, not in everything, but in a lot of things. He elevated Jeet Kune Do beyond what he was given.
Okay.
When I train with him, it's part of the reason my school is called Evolution.
Hmm.
Um, and part of that is because of conversations. We talked about philosophy a lot. Really, really enjoyed it. Um, oh, it's just Terry Ballard said, I remember Sifu Jerry didn't like the name of the book. Yeah, he probably didn't. He hated all that stuff.
Right.
He didn't want to deal with any of it, to be perfectly honest. At least my experience. Um, we always trained. It was always about the philosophy, and just moved through. I think I derailed myself completely, but we were going into. I was at a point I was going to make. It was you had a great question, Dwight. And I
Yeah.
want to.
It was about, you said that you think that he elevated
Oh
JKD.
yeah, I think he elevated. So I called it evolution. This was my conversations with Sifu Jerry that it's constantly evolving and it's constantly growing and we're constantly going into a new level. And uh, he took it further. And I think it's just I would say like, look, I'm pretty good at this stuff. At what I particularly do, it's not the same as everybody else does, but what I do, I'm pretty good at it. But I didn't have to do a lot of work. Like Bruce did all the forging,
Mhm.
Jerry did all the refining, and I was just sort of like handed, here you go. I was like, I like that's not very hard. Like of course I can get it,
Right.
but for me, we should be evolving, and I think Bruce started something really great, and then again, I don't think that, and he never said it to me. He would never ever say that, but it was always something in my mind that he was taking it further. And when I trained with him,
Right.
Sifu Jerry Poteet was still evolving. He was still growing as a student, as a martial artist. He was still elevating his martial arts and what
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
And I think this because I've seen his old videos. I remember what I've seen what other people are doing. I've seen what he was presenting, and then sometimes I look at stuff even where I started, and I think, well, we never moved that way. At the end, we were never moving this way because that's just not how we moved.
Mhm.
Maybe he moved that way with somebody else, but we started kind of here and then went to something else. And I think it was just, again, I had really great training I'd been training with Ed, and he introduced me a ton of people there in LA. And, LA is like, I always say you throw a rock and you hit five masters in whatever martial art you want to think about. And it's true. Like you hang out in LA and you're like, oh, do you know a kung fu guy? Do you know this guy? They're like, yeah, I know five or six of them. I'll go introduce you. We're
Yeah.
hanging out over here,
Yeah.
and you just run around with all these really powerhouse people. And so I was running around and training with all these really great guys as I was training with Ed. And then I was first introduced to Jerry in 2000. We did a seminar in it was Ed school at Combative Arts Academy, and we did it, and it was super fantastic. And I would go with Ed as his plus one to instructor seminars.
Mhm.
Um, and then in 2005, I had asked if I could be a student, and he said, "Hold on, I got some stuff coming up." So, and then there was a class. It was like 12 Saturdays that we did. It was me and a bunch of other guys from Combative Arts Academy, all of Ed's students, and we came in and did that in early 2006, and then summer of 2006. He called me up and was like, "Yeah, come in." I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'm gonna start." I thought I was gonna do like a week. I do like a couple hours this week, and then do the next week and the next week, and then hold on, Dwight, you're frozen on my side.
Am I?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm frozen. I don't know if you're
No.
frozen on live feed, but you're
No,
frozen on
you're
me.
good. You're good.
Oh, okay, well,
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Nobody wants to see me. You know what? Let me see if I can do something. Because
I was
actually,
thinking about this. I was like, there's always technical difficulties on your show. I was like, yes.
yeah.
I'm gonna ask you if we're gonna have a
Okay.
problem or not.
So I'm gonna try something and see if it unfreezes me. I actually wanted to start. Can you see that?
Oh, something started to show up. I think that was the picture of my wife and kids with me.
Yeah. Can you see it?
I can't see it.
That's interesting.
I see the outline, and it was up there for like 2 seconds. Great technology, you're like beaming stuff all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's actually I had intended to start talking to you, showing you that picture and getting an update on these wonderful people. I saw that picture and I said to myself, that's what it's about for this guy.
Yeah, I think you'd mentioned that in the dialogue. So this is the picture from my website, from my bio.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys
So
are
that's
like
my
on
wife.
the
If you could see it, great. I mean, my wife is gorgeous and beautiful, Catherine, and then my son Elliot and my daughter Quinn. I actually was teaching class right before this, and my daughter Quinn was in the kung fu class with me, which is super fun. They're all three super amazing, which was a big deal. So in the early '90s, and I'm not the historian guy to go to for dates and stuff, but Jerry Poteet had a liver transplant. His liver was failing, and he had a liver transplant, and that was successful. And I think that was a really big eye opener. And that was always sort of the thing of, for me, I think that sort of changed things. He had to start really reevaluating how he moved, how he approached Jeet Kune Do, and how
right.
he applied Jeet Kune Do directly to his life. Well, I was training, and this will all tie together. It's crazy. Crazy roller coaster. So I started training with Jerry in 2006, and I thought it was going to be, I'll do a week here, I'll do a couple of classes here, or I'll do an hour or two here, and then I'll do it
Mhm.
next week, and I'll spread it out, right? And then
Yeah.
I'll build up to it. And he was like, no, you're coming in, you're doing 20 hours in this week, Monday through Friday. We start at 8 a.m. and we go to 12 because I'm better in the morning. And I was like, what? Because I was bouncing. I was working on Sunset Strip,
Right.
and I was like, holy crap, I got to figure this out because we don't usually end. So I had to talk to my partners. I got the early leave shift for a bit. And I was not a morning person, but I was getting up, and you got to get up earlier and then get ready and then drive over. And so I would drive from my I was living in West LA at the time, and then drove up great, wonderful 405, and went to his house, and he was in Sherman Oaks. And yeah, the 405. If you've been in LA,
Yeah.
you know the 405.
Oh yeah.
And so you got to allot this extra time, and I would train. And we always went long. It was never 4 hours and out. It was 4 hours plus a little bit. But wow, man, my brain just exploded with that. So that was 2006. Train, 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 train. And we can come back to some of this other stuff later. But and then I had also 2006. I was with a girlfriend, and just one of those things of she's a nice person, but the relationship just wasn't going. We were going more and more this way, just in our personal choices, and so we split. And so I go into 2007 having trained and still training. I'm still there and I'm still training. And now I'm single, so then I get in a studio apartment. I don't have anything to do but train. And so I would work, go to lessons, and then
Mhm.
just train in my studio apartment just by myself, just for hours. And so I did that for years, and then I met my wife. And bouncing's not the most. It tends to get to you because it's like law enforcement
Yeah.
and a lot of other things. You're dealing with a negative aspect of people, and it sort of
Right.
gets on you. And I
Right.
was at that particular point in my life, I was feeling a bit frustrated. But then I met my wife, and it was interesting. Right before we left LA and moved to Oklahoma, we decided to move back to Oklahoma because we wanted to raise a family,
Yeah.
and it seemed a bit more viable to do there. And I was assisting for it was a seminar, and I was like finishing up, and I was doing 2 hours. Oh, there's a picture. Um, yeah, we were on vacation. It was a family vacation. It was a super fun time. We went to Invermere. It's in just into BC, just sort of over by Banff. If you've heard of Banff, super fun. But I was training, and Catherine and I had put this plan together, and we were saving money because we were about to move to Oklahoma. We were going to have a baby. So there's a move, there was a baby, and I was going to open up a school for the first time. So we were saving all of our nickels and dimes that we could. But I really sort of fit in. What do I want to do for learning? And there was a couple of people that I was seriously looking at going to do some training with. Do I want to go and get certified under Crew Puck from MTA? Do I want to go to Nicholas Sinok and get my go ahead and get my silver officially and from him? And I was really thinking about it, and those were viable choices as we started putting our plan together. And I said, no, I'm going to actually put all my money into Jerry Poteet, and that's where I'm going to go. But I had a fixed amount of money to sort of allot for that for me to be able to show up and do my lessons. And then there was an instructor seminar, and I was like, Sifu, it's whatever you choose. I prefer the in person with you, but maybe the doing the seminar, you think that's better for me. Your choice, but like I have money for one or the other, but I don't have money for both. And so you just let me know which one's going to be best. And so he said, okay, let me think about it. And the next week I came in, I was training with him, and he said, okay, what I want you to do is you're not going to, it was a 4-day thing. And he said, you're just going to come in for the second 2 days. You're going to be my assistant for it. I said, okay, great. And you're like, don't pay for it. And so I came in and I was assisting, and my wife was there. And she was whatever that was in like May. So she was 6 months pregnant with our son. And Jerry turns back to her. I was out teaching a section of something, and he turns back to her. And she shared this with me later. She said, Joel used to have a lot more anger in him, and I've seen a lot of that go away in the last year. And I think that's because of you. And she said it was one of the most amazing things he had ever said. And to me, I think it's absolutely true. Like I found purpose with my wife. And we had our wedding in June. It was a big send off for everybody. And then Sifu was there, which is a funny side story of I was out and Jerry and Fran actually showed up and I helped them park and find everything. And then my friends were like, "Hey Joel, are you actually going to get ready for your wedding?" So I had to run back to our suite and then get all dudded up and go out for the wedding. But we moved and our son was born. I opened up the school. It was a really crazy summer in 2010, and then my wife put off for a year going into nursing school, and then she went in nursing school, and I was running the school there in Oklahoma. We were doing great. Everything was fantastic, and then uh, we she got pregnant with our daughter Quinn, and Quinn was born in May of 2013, um, and my wife graduated nursing school in May of 2013. In June of 2013, 2 days before her birthday, she gets diagnosed with a brain tumor, and it was about the size of my fist.
Mm.
Fortunately, we had a really great neurosurgeon that happened to be there in Oklahoma City, and did a really. I mean, we were calling back to California. We had friends in at Cedar Sinai. We were looking at that. We were looking at a lot of different options. We happened to have a really amazing surgeon, Dr. Shagru, and so she got really great surgery. And then afterwards, we got really aggressive with treatment, and uh, she ended up doing chemo and proton radiation, which she was able to get into. We happened to be 15 minutes away from one of 12 proton radiation places in the continental United States. There were people from England coming in, and we happened to be a 15-minute drive from it. So we were able to go there and get treatment, and we did treatment for a year. And with all of that, we decided her mom came down. Diane was amazing. Her mom came down and helped us out a lot, and was with helping with the kids and stuff. And we decided moving to Canada, back to where she was born and raised here in Winnipeg, Canada. It's in Manitoba, basically straight north of Oklahoma City. Uh, and a lot colder. But we moved, and it's been a good move, and it's been happy. And her family has been really helpful with the kids. Everybody's
Right.
over at Grammy and Granddad's house right now, and it's just been really great. But going back to Sifu Jerry, he passed away already at this point in January 2012. But his big thing of applying Jeet Kune Do to his life was when he had his liver transplant and fighting for his life. And then Catherine and I did that as well. We had to really cut away and really focus, and it was always think hit, and really reevaluate what we were doing. And that was a big battle of having that fortitude to be able to go through it. If you've gone through it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you don't. It's sort of like being in a fight. You can
No,
talk
I
about being
haven't.
in a fight all you want to, but until you're actually in a real fight, you have no idea what anybody's talking about.
Yeah.
It's all make believe, and you can
Yeah.
think you're going to act one way or you're going to do one thing,
Okay.
but
Can you
not.
can can
She's stable, by the way. She's doing fantastic.
yeah, well, yeah, I was going to get to that. Okay, so I'm going to try to reload and see if that unfreezes my screen.
Well,
Hopefully
you're
it
not in
won't.
a bad. You're in a very in a contemplative, like thoughtful pose. I was getting some crazy, like mouth half open, eyes are all squinty stuff. I get
Yeah,
some weird pose. You're in a good pose. There's
yeah.
lots of practice on your side.
Okay, so yeah, hopefully it won't drop us out of the stream and it'll just put us right back in.
Okay.
If not, we'll just go through the whole reconnecting thing and pick up where we
Okay.
left off. Give me a sec.
I don't know if I'm still on here, gang, but if you're joining, fantastic. Where's everybody at from? Is that
Okay.
Stockholm, Sweden? Nice. New Brunswick. Canadians in the house.
All right. Okay. All right. Can you hear me?
Ah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. I think I'm unfrozen, and I think we're still
You're unfrozen on
continuing.
mine.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. So, but so you filled us in spectacularly, right? An amazing
We've had
soliloquy,
to tell the story a few times.
right? And
It's
yeah,
a pretty crazy one.
right. But I'm still intrigued by the fact that you met her at Katana Robata.
So I was working security at Katana, which is it was kind of funny because it's you know gorgeous people all over the place, but it was elevated up a level.
Hmm.
So if you go to Katana, it's on Sunset. It's a great place. It has a staircase that goes up a level. And there's a big patio up here. Well, I was down. I was down on the sidewalk level or over on the other level. So big staff as it is all often for
Yeah.
places like that, and like young man single, like everybody else, like hey, who's the cute new girl? And but I never had a chance for any of these girls that would come into Katana because they would talk to waiters, other waiters, patrons, you name it, and you're like, well, never mind. You're like, they see me twice.
Hmm.
They see me at the beginning of the night and the end of the night, and that's about it. But for the hours in between, they don't usually see me unless something went wrong, and then they're not wanting to talk to me anyway because they want me to do my job. Um, but I remember she came in and she just started, and ironically, I was looking at stopping doing this, and I'd done that before when I was trying to go from working security to just teaching.
Right.
And LA is pretty fickle about stuff, and you get a fire and all of a sudden you're not doing anything for a week. And it didn't work out, so I had to go back into bouncing. And I went back into bouncing and running security at different places. And Katana, I got into Katana, and I was thinking about doing it again. I thought, well, I'm going to be smarter this time, and I'm just going to start, instead of just stopping, I'm
Hmm.
going to start dialing it down. And I was originally going to stop on New Year's Eve. I was going to say, hey, I'm going to go out with a big blast for New Year's. And I thought, maybe not. Well, she got hired on New Year's Eve day and then started like the next week. And I came in and met her, and it was literally like, hi, my name is Jerry.
Oh, okay. So
And
she
she
worked
was
there.
training. She worked there. She was training, and I met her.
Ah,
And then I came in. My friend Doug came in, visiting me from Oklahoma, who was also, by the way, the one who took me back to get ready after my wedding. He's like, "Don't you think you should get ready?" He came to our wedding, and he was there. Um, so my buddy Doug, that I went to University of Oklahoma with, and we uh, we were sitting there, and Doug was in town. He's got some family in Southern California, so he came over, and we were hanging out. We went to Katana, and we're sitting there eating, and I know all the staff and everything, and so she was shadowing. She was following somebody else as part of her training, and I remember her walking away, and I turned to Doug, and I was like, I am so chasing after her. And then we went up, and they wanted the table, so Doug and I went in, and we're just hanging out. We're sitting at the bar, just chatting away, and she finished early, and I was like, it's sort of it was one of those things that was sort of frowned upon for like waiters to sit down at that time, but I was in a different category and I was off, so it didn't make any difference. I was like, hey, well, can she sit down with us?
yeah.
And so sat down. She had a glass of wine with us, and Catherine and I joke about this. We had Doug over the house several times, and I was chatting with Doug, and then Catherine sat down. I was like, and just talking to her, and it was we decided to meet up again later, and then we just sort of texting and
Yeah.
calling and chatting. We didn't actually hang out a whole lot,
Yeah.
but we were getting to know each other, and we both sort of been there, done that, and knew we liked each other. We were kind of over
I love it.
the
I love
whole
it.
dating scene. I can't imagine dating again. It would be
Yeah.
way too.
Yeah. Well,
And then we kind of figured out, and we were that was January, and we kind of sorted ourselves out, and we were engaged by, she's going to correct me on this, but I thought it was June. We were engaged by June, and then figured it all out. And then had plans to move back to Oklahoma by the end of summer,
right.
and we're really just on point with all that. But yeah, it was meeting, and I was phasing out of
Yeah.
working, and I phased out more and more and more. And then I started working at another place in Pasadena, because they paid me a crap load of money. Um, so
Was this security again?
it was security again. I was running a team, which is a
Okay.
crazy thing. So here I'm me, and I'm running a team with guys who are all bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I had like they were a couple of the guys. They all knew each other,
Yeah.
and they were like from Compton, and
Huh.
like yeah, somebody came up once and was like, "Yo, do you know who I am? I'm from Compton." They were like, "Oh yeah, what street you from? What corner you from?" And they started listing stuff, and the guys were like, "Oh my gosh!" And then they were all huge. They were massive. I had this army of guys, and then I had like
That's
one big
ridiculous.
burly Brazilian guy. But I was like the skinny, scrawny guy sitting up there, and they
Right.
sort of like, "Who's this guy?" You know, cocky-heeled guy that I was.
Yeah.
And then they saw me move and grab somebody, and they were like, "Oh shit!"
Right. Now,
A
I
lot of
wanted to ask you about that. Did you have to make, when you started security work, which
mhm,
you had not done before, I assume,
correct.
did you have to make any immediate adjustments to what you did as a martial artist, or did it all just flow easily and naturally?
No, I found two things. So I made a huge adjustment later. I started so I was again, we're at Combative Arts Academy, and I was a brown belt at the time under Ed,
Hmm.
and um, so I was one of the higher ranking guys, and there was a couple other guys, Keith and Dre. They were both bouncing at the clubs, top clubs in there in Hollywood,
Okay.
and they're like, "You should get in this." I was like, well, "I don't know anything about bouncing." Like they're like, "Dude, you're higher ranked than we are, and we're doing this. Like, come on in, we'll introduce you." And I was like, "Okay." So I went in, and they put me on like run the line. I like to keep people in line on the streets, and I was like, "Okay." So I just talked to people, and I was nice and personable with people. And then I had some guys who would teach me, about how to, here's how you read license to check IDs. Here's how you do this. Here's how you read that. And then just a lot of the martial skill that you do of reading a person, analyzing a person,
Yeah.
pretty easy. There was an incident that happened once, and it was back when Puff Daddy was Sean Combs was big cheese back in the day, and he came in and he had two sets of bodyguards. One were like these big huge guys, and another was like these smaller guys in suits that were actually protecting him. And
Mhm.
I wasn't there at the beginning, but apparently one of the big guys, or maybe it was Puffy himself, bumped into this other guy who was built like a block, and there was two of them. And I bump into him, and then it's like, "What? Who are you?" And he's like, "Whatever," with my entourage. And goes off, and they're like, "F you, dude!" And these guys jump in there, and then I get in. So I see him walking off with his actual security, and then I see the big guys up there, and it's these big guys up there, and they sort of de-escalated, and everybody else was around, and they're like, "Yeah, here," and I was like, "Dude, split these guys up because they're gonna get into it in about 2 seconds. They're friends now. Let's part ways now because somebody's ego is going to jump in a second." And they
Yeah.
were like, and jumped in, and I was like, "How does the security team? How do these guys not know like basic stuff?" And it was just things that I was taught over and over and over
Right.
through Ed and through everybody else that I trained with, and just reading the crowd, reading what's going on,
Yeah.
and went through. And it was always, I used to say like, "Oh no, nothing ever happened," and then I started telling stories, as most of the guys do. You're like, "Oh wait a minute, I guess more stuff happened than I thought." It was
Hmm.
never a bloodbath kind of place, but it was kind of there. I moved from sort of a club place, and the owners opened up another place on Sunset, and I moved into a suit, and then I wore a suit for most of the
Now,
time until the place in Pasadena.
is that what led to private clientele, or did you?
In
You
some cases, and a lot of it was through Ed. I had a lot of people
uh,
through Ed or through the school. I was, junior to him, but I was also cheaper than he was. So, and sometimes, he couldn't take in somebody.
right.
And then I did get in some privates on my own, where I was just sort of reaching out to the general public. I got a few people. Sometimes through bouncing, they would know who it was, and they get to know me a bit better, and
Hmm.
know that I did train in martial arts, and then I was actually a teacher. And they're like, "Oh, well, let me do privates," and then they would get into it. A
Yeah.
big one for me was it was at that place, the second place I went to where I was wearing a suit. I was called Chi, and uh, a big fight broke out, and it was a couple of guys who like poking at the bartender for some reason and punched the bartender. And the manager screaming, I bolt down the end of the bar, and tackle this guy down. And I had been doing a ton of sport training. So Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Muay Thai, Savate, uh, Judo. I was doing a ton of it with wrestling background. I
Yeah.
took a guy down, tackled him down, locked him up, started counting him out, choked him out. Another guy's on top of me and he's scratching me, right? And I'm tucking away from him. And fortunately, I got like a bus boy who's in there, and I've got a regular patron in there because there's three guys, and I'm choking one guy out. One guy scratching me, another guy's over there somewhere. I don't know what guy number three was at the time. And I choke guy number one out. I get up for guy number two. I'm holding him. Guy number two is a little bit bigger and stronger than me, and I'm trying not to. You want to do stuff, and you don't know quite what to do.
Yeah.
Of trying to battle someone, of how much force you're going to apply in something. You don't want to wreck somebody just because they're a drunk idiot, even if they're a really strong drunk idiot who's grabbing a hold of you. Well, this guy was looking at his friend, and all of a sudden he looked at me, and the only way I can ever explain it is he just shifted, and it went from I'm looking over there to just shifted into you're in my way, and all of his focus went on me, and it was like, oh shit. So he's coming in with me, and I got to deal with this guy. And I remember headbutting this guy. I headbutt pretty hard. I told another friend of mine Matt, who had bounced. I was like, oh man, I headbutt this guy. And he goes, oh man. I said, yeah. And then he looked at me and goes, dude, what are you doing? And I thought, oh shit, this didn't have any impact on this guy at all. I don't know if it messed him up or not, but he just was like, what is that? And so I started going through Rolodex of things to do. And meanwhile, guy number three starts kicking the bartender who's on guy number one. So I back kick that guy and send him flying over. He hits a partition and then lands and then just scurries out and takes off. And then I turn back to guy number two and finally just leg sweep this guy down and switch from more sporting mindset to a more combative mindset, going from more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu into Taijutsu, and throw this guy down in his small joint locks and then flip him around. And it's amazing how much better that stuff works when you're not safeguarding a training partner. And I put a guy's hand not here, but I put it all the way up here, and he was down, and it was a different mind shift for me.
Yeah.
And at that point, I started really approaching my training in a different way. Not that I didn't enjoy sport training and going in and doing kickboxing and other things. I really do
Right.
enjoy those things. But as far as how I approached my personal training of what I was going to apply, it did have a really big impact. And then I started training with Jerry Poteet, and we took a different edge to everything we did. So it was always having a different mindset to what am I going to do to somebody. It's not necessarily gouge their eye out.
Yeah.
But I've always got it in my back pocket.
Yeah. Did I freeze again?
You did freeze again.
Okay.
You're such a good listener. So I'm talking, and then I'm like, oh wait, he's frozen.
Yeah. Okay. So weigh in, because you may have seen one of these proverbial Facebook discussions about Jeet Kune Do and where it belongs on the whole spectrum. It's not a sport. It's for self-defense. So, okay. So does it have an application in security work?
That's a big box. And there's a lot in there. And I'm going to try to avoid just throwing people under the bus. I think there's two different aspects. And I think one of the things that I try to, and I'm doing currently now, is holding on to Jeet Kune Do. Everybody reads what Bruce Lee wrote, and you got to remember those are his notes. You've got notes. I've got notes. We all have notes, but someone else deciphering my notes is not the same as me telling you what my real thoughts are, And I think Bruce Lee, in my opinion, take it for whatever it is. Bruce Lee is not speaking to an instructor. He's speaking to a martial artist. He's speaking to a fellow martial artist about a personal journey. He was writing from his perspective as a martial artist. So me as a martial artist talking to someone else as a martial artist is not the same thing as me as an instructor talking to a student. I always tell my students, my job is to show you everything, and then you get to pick and choose what you want. And that's what Bruce is saying. And a lot of people say that and then run their schools accordingly. I disagree with that. because you're not offering the student the opportunity to then choose for themselves. You're choosing for your student. Can it be applied in there? Absolutely, because that's the other part of that is you can shape it to your own unique self. If you want to apply things, I did non-telegraphic movements all the time.
Right.
One of my go-to movements was this shoulder pop, and then I lock on around the head and come back here because I didn't want to go into this big double-handed lock for like a rear
Hmm.
naked choke because you've got two hands tied up on somebody. And I did this thing on a lot of people, and it's pop. So it's the same thing as you might go to the head. You're going to the shoulder point and hitting in there to turn them, and then you're
Right.
locking on. It's the same thing as hitting someone in the throat. You're just clenching onto it, and it's all grappling and locking, and boom, and you take their balance. I have defeated you. I've intercepted all of everything you're going to do, and I'm going to take you out the door. And I have another hand over here that's free now. So if
Hmm.
you do something, I can adjust to that, and I can change to whatever you're doing. Can you apply it to there? Yes, but you have to modify. You have to mentally sort of adjust to that. Of
Right.
not I'm not going to crack somebody's skull open every night.
Yeah.
You go to jail if you do that. I mean, just
Yeah. So then is that why? Well, two things, right?
mhm.
What
You're frozen. Keep
prepared
going.
you? Okay,
But it's
let
a
me.
very good listening.
It's another
Like
one.
you have such a good. You always freeze in such a. You're like I've got. I can't do it. You have a great listening frozen face.
Well, it's because, well, it's easier when I have somebody like you on,
Oh
right?
well, thanks.
Somebody who's got a
Oh, and you're coming back in.
get myself back in
Oh,
there,
there you are. There you are.
right?
All right. So
Okay.
you had two things on that.
Yeah. So from LA to Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
is it the time you spent at combative arts? Did that prepare you for opening up your own school?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And directly and indirectly. So I was an assistant instructor under Ed, and I taught a lot there. I taught with him at UCLA. He opened a lot of doors for me. He also introduced me to a lot of other instructors,
Right.
and before chief among them being Jerry Poteet. And then before, and for years I was teaching for him. I also was in Japan for a year.
I wanted to ask you about that. I
So
made
I
a
left for
note here.
Japan. I left for Japan, which was a really strange time. So
Okay, wait, hang on. Let
9/11
me.
happened on what, Tuesday, and
Right.
I was flying out on Sunday to go to Tokyo for a year. And I was teaching at at the Shokasugi Institute, SK.
Yes.
Shokasugi, if you don't know, he did a bunch like Revenge of the Ninja. He did a lot
Yep.
of the ninja movies in the '80s, which is kind
Yep.
of funny because I grew up on all this stuff. And it was one of his schools, a performance school, and I had a performance background, and I really got to go in and teach. I was teaching kids all the way up to adults,
Hmm.
and so I learned a lot as an instructor there. And then again, coming back with Ed, and I had substituted for him and for other people at UCLA
Right.
in the department, and then I also just talked to other instructors and wanted to gather in all of the pros and cons of what they did.
Hmm.
What was great about what did I like about this school? And then I would go talk to them like,
Yeah.
what's your 2 cents? Like, tell me, what's your words of wisdom for me? And I was very fortunate to have a few people that I could go and talk to. I could talk to Ed, I could talk to Sensei Chadwick, I talked to Sifu Jerry about it, and and a few others, friends who had run schools. A friend of mine, Robert, who's a Taekwondo black belt, was talking about you got to do kids because that's where you're going to go into it. I
Right.
taught kids previously, so combative arts was only adults.
Right.
So there's only adults there. My kid teaching experience was when I was in Japan, and then when I came back, it's been great. Like I just taught a kids class. It's super fun.
Yeah. But now the kids. Is that why your shirt says Kung Fu JKD?
That so the kung fu is a further. The kung fu is the Georgia kung fu. It's a style that Ed put together,
Okay.
and I'm a black belt in that under him. And
Right.
then he's allowed me to inherit that as he modified a little bit different, and I teach it. Uh, for him, what he teaches is integrates Jeet Kune Do as we got it from Jerry Poteet, a
Right.
lot more into what they're doing, and it's a
Hmm.
little bit different curriculum. For me, I keep them a bit more separate. It's almost like two hands. This is me being de-escalating is the kung fu,
Hmm.
and then the JKD is me escalating.
Okay.
So violence. So de-escalate violence, escalate violence.
Got it.
Um,
When do the kids cross over?
they start crossing over in the juniors. So I start them with kids, and that's ages like 6 to 12, and then 12 to 17, 18 is my middle class. And I
Hmm.
started incorporating a little bit more of the athletic aspects to it. Some of the energy training drills that we do,
Hmm.
cross energy drills. They're doing some of the different punching drills that were passed down. Getting into a lot more of that, and just introducing that idea of how they do it. And they're still working on basic things of break falls,
Yeah.
basic punching, basic kicking, some basic throwing. Like we were doing single legs and throws from our knees today, but we're doing some other stuff in there too. Going with the push, um, which is one of the things I took a lot of this stuff. Like I said, I inherited that art. It allowed me to do that.
Yeah.
And I took all the. We used to have these self-defense program or self-defense examples. Like there's a two-handed choke from the front, and you tuck the chin, you do this, and you do this, and I remember as I kept going up, I started forgetting what the sequence was, and I would just hit people. And my younger brother was in the army, and I remember we went back. I went back for Christmas one year, and he was showing me what they were doing. I was like, this is total garbage. Like this is not realistic. This is you got like 15 moves to do something when someone's going to be trying to kill you. Like I haven't been on a battlefield, but I can't imagine it's going to be less intense
Right.
than bouncing. And so I started really focusing on things. At the same time I was training with Sifu Jerry, and so it really defined a lot of things. I just distilled everything down, and I came up with what I called the quick three. If someone grabs you, if there's a grab, you drop. If there's a push or a pull, you go with it, and it runs very easily, and it starts going into truth. And another big one, which everybody skips for self defense, if there's a choke, you tuck your chin,
Yeah.
and then everything else goes off of that. So if you're stable, then you can start thinking about moving, and then you can start thinking about hitting, and then you can start thinking about kicking, and then you can start thinking about manipulating, whether it's throwing or trapping or choking or restraining somebody else.
Hmm.
Um, and you find this if you're doing Jeet Kune Do, you find it if you're doing anything else. Judo, you do it. Kali, you do it. Wrestling, you do it. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you do it. All these arts, you do it. If you think about it, it's all kind of in there. It's going with the push or a pull. How
Right.
many times do you move with somebody and you're like, oh, why does this little tiny judoka master, why are they throwing all these big giant goons all over the place like it's nothing? Because they're just borrowing the energy. Oh, you want to go this way? I'll go this way.
Hmm.
And you're
Yeah.
on the ground.
Yeah.
How? Because they've been doing it for 40, 50 years. It's just refined
Right.
technique.
The so the cross training that I guess we could say cross training has been an integral part of your martial art life almost from day one, right?
Yes, I'm a little bit different. So I started with a really strong wrestling background.
Right.
And then when I
Did
got
you view wrestling as a martial art or as a sport?
both, I used to not
Ah,
consider it.
ah,
But if you're going to count judo, if you're going to count Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, if you're going to count savate, you're going to count even Muay Thai as it's in the ring. If you're going to count sporting things like that, uh, why not? Like you're going
right,
to count sound, why not?
right,
If you're going to count boxing, why wouldn't you count wrestling?
right,
They have martial backgrounds and they
right.
are sport. I absolutely
Yeah,
agree with that.
yeah.
Um, which is, for me, sport is really great, but it's sparring. And some people, oh, it's not sparring. You didn't go to my school. You didn't train with my training partners. I know guys who don't. Nobody sees them because they're not in the world. They're doing something else. They're just monsters. Like they can just fight.
Hmm.
And I'm sure you've got training partners like, look, this guy, so and so was really, really good. I got a ton of those people where we just did it. We went. And that was in sports stuff, and at combative arts and a few other places where we just beat the crap out of each other.
Right.
I don't assign to the knuckle dragger kind of training methodology, but I've been there, done that a few times. I don't recommend. I found ways to teach. Like if you teach a break fall, you don't have to do throws on industrial carpet on top of concrete anymore. I can teach you to do break falls without getting it. It takes a little bit longer, but you're not going to be banged up and stuff.
Yeah.
You're not going to break your hand on everything else. Let's be a little
Yeah.
bit smarter about our training instead of just let's train really, really hard. Be smart about. And I think that goes into there's a great book called The Warrior Elite by a man named Dick Couch, and I stumbled across it years ago. I actually gave it to Jerry Poteet and gave it to him to read. And if anybody wants to read it, it's a fantastic read. I got no game in that book other than it's a more modern book to read that talks about sort of the warrior ethos. But in there, it might be in that one, might be in one of the other ones, but I think it's in this one. They're talking about how the author was a Navy SEAL, and it was talking about the forging of SEAL Team 223, I think, which is lone survivor Luttrell, Marcus Luttrell.
Marcus, yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? They did a movie on it, Lone Survivor. I read that book first, and he referenced this book, and I was like, well, what's that? So I got that book, and it's this one, and I found that one to be really, really insightful. And he was a Vietnam era, I think, I haven't read it, the bio in a long time, Navy SEAL, but he was talking about how they used to just go hard and fast, and you're just going to do as much as we do. But now they really apply science to it, and the instructors at Buds, they look at it differently. Yes, you have to be at this level, and Bruce would always talk about that. I remember not quite understanding that, but you're just at this fight level. You're at this athletic level all the time. Navy SEALs stay at this athletic level all the time, running or swimming or whatever. And I've known a few young men who have trained to go into SEALs, or other things, and they're in the pool, they're running, they're all the time. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce, all the time. You and I are all the time being athletic as we can be, being up here, because that's just part of the job.
Right.
You have to pick up 50 pounds. That's part of the job. You have to be able to run. That's part of the job. That's just part of the job. And so that they really sort of put this on you, not because they're trying to punish you, but because this is just part of the job. You need to be at this certain level physically and mentally, because that's part of the job. But we're going to guide you through it. We're going to take a systematic approach to getting you to there, because later on, we're going to be coworkers working together on the same team, and my life is going to be in your hands and vice versa. And I think it was really, really insightful for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. And this is how I feel with a lot of my martial arts friends. Instead of us just beating the crap out of each other, it's going, because we're going to slip and zig and zag here and there anyway. As you know, how many times have you zigged when you should have zagged and eaten a punch through one of your friends, and they're like, dude, you okay? And you're like, I will be in a second.
When was the last time? Wednesday?
Yeah, just coming in. So there's a lot into it for me. Is sport there? Yeah, but sports sparring. Just coming in. I just actually watched the UFC fight for the first time in quite a while. It was a really great one. It was the Holloway fight, and I liked it because he was going. He's just like, I'm throwing punches. I got good combos. He was doing a lot, and they were even commenting on it. He was moving a lot, and I liked it. Usually, like Ed and I have watched a couple fights together. We usually like, hit him, just punch him, just throw a punch. And this guy was throwing punches the whole time. It was great for me. I watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which doesn't do it, but there's still referees. There's still rules, that you agree upon, and that's what you do in sparring. There's a certain amount of gear. They're wearing gloves. They're wearing cups. We're not gouging to the eyes. We're not doing that. Which is going to go into your other question. These so-called JKD guys out there saying I'm too dangerous to do. I don't train that. Bullshit. Like, come on, dude. At novice level, you're going to start with a closed fist, and you're going to put some gloves on. You're going to punch somebody in the face, and they're going to punch you in the face. I learned a lot by getting punched in the face by other people. Right. Whether it was at Combative Arts with Ed and my guys there, or if I was doing Savate, if I was doing Muay Thai, if I was whatever it was, getting locked up. And I was just talking to Fabio about this, my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor. I used to get choked, and you're like, tap, like, oh crap. all right, let me try something different this time. And someone would do something and you try something different. It's like, dude, that's sparring. It's part of it, whether you're grappling or kickboxing or what have you. I'm too dangerous. That means you don't have any control. It means you haven't done any actual sparring. You don't have any confidence. Now, if you and I are sparring, which Seafood Jerry had he would always do this with stories. He always make a point with stories, and this one was, you stay on drill. If it's a jab to jab drill, right? I
Mm-hmm.
do jab, you return jab, right? Switch drills, and you do jab, jab, jab. But if we do this, and then I go off drill, and I throw a cross in there because you pressured me too much, and I broke from drill, all bets are off. You get free hand. And he was telling me this, and then there was a group of us, and then he said he was training Jason Scott Lee for Dragon,
Yeah.
and he brought him in. I think he staged this. I think he did it on purpose. But two of the other guys, I don't remember which guys it were. He said two of the guys were going and they were doing the drill, and Jason was like, "Oh, this is really impressive." And then one of them broke drill, and the other one just went bah, 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 and just punched him down in the corner. And apparently Jason was like, "Oh crap!" And he's like, "Should we leave?" And he's like, "No, no, it's fine." And I think that Seafood Jerry maybe staged that to kind of go give the actor guy a little bit of a eye opener. I don't know. I wasn't there. You
Right.
forgot. Maybe you could talk to Jay Scott Lee.
What
Find out if he
What
was
did you
present.
think of his performance in Dragon?
I liked it, which is funny. I saw that before I ever met Jerry Poteet,
Oh, okay.
and I liked it. I've gone back and watched it. There's some things in there that Jerry didn't like about it, but I think that more had to do with there's the fourth person. I don't think I got to that, which was my teacher's friend. It was Sifu Jerry's friend and his teacher and his personal relationship, which he held to an extremely high level, with just over everything. That was sort of the overall writing thing for him, was how special Bruce Lee was to him as an individual and how
Mhm.
important Bruce Lee was to him as a person. Yes, the martial arts were part of that, but it was also
Right.
his experience with Bruce Lee directly and coming into it. And the same for me. And I think you said this. You said a great comment, and kind of goes in the JKD world of JKD is this or that, and I think you said I didn't really care what was on the wall. I just wanted to train with Dan.
Hmm.
And for me, it's kind of the same thing. Call it whatever you want. I've even contemplated a few times, like I throw the name away. And my students know what I teach, and they come in, they're like, "Wow, this is something, I like it." And everybody's students are going to say that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that's why I do a free trial. You come in to see if it's what you like.
Yeah.
But
How long is the free trial? Just one class?
just one class.
Okay.
You'll figure it out in one class. You'll figure out, there's no,
Right.
and it's but you'll figure out if you like it, and it's also,
Yeah.
do you like the people? And I think that's really
Yeah.
important for me. That's one of
Yeah.
the things that I got from, again, those teachers who were telling me, is doing a free trial of, you know do you like what I teach? Do you like how I teach? Do you like the other people in class? And does it fit with your schedule? But I think those are really important, because my adult class was on Wednesday, and we had a phenomenal class. It was amazing. And I always thank my students, because I say, we had an amazing class. Yes, I put a framework up for you to work within and explore and discover things,
Hmm.
but it's your partners. It's everybody else. It's what you're bringing into here. And I've been really fortunate to always have these just really great class dynamics.
Yeah.
Mostly because I just have no tolerance for dipshits. The guy coming in, I'm too dangerous. I can do. No, you can't. Like,
Right.
love up, buddy. Look, love up. But if we are in there, it goes back to that story. If you, in the kind of, they're running on this excuse of, if I'm going in and I'm going just hands with a pro boxer, I'll go just hands with a pro boxer. But there's two parts of that. One is, I might get pressured because pro boxers can be really, really freaking good, right? They know how to box. I'm stepping in their world. I might get overwhelmed a little bit, and I might have to break into something else, like a front snap kick to the groin or a kick to the knee or something. Well, that's because I've trained it, or I might drop down to a single leg and dump them on the ground.
Hmm.
Whatever, something that's outside of their expertise, which is what you do with as a martial artist. You find an opening, and we try to go for everything, whether it's a grappling thing or a punching or kicking or what have you.
Right.
but they're also not training to defend against that. But that's an oops, like if you oops something, if you're supposed to be doing jab to jab, and boom, boom, oh crap, sorry, man, that was not. How many times have we done that? You're training and you oops something, you have to apologize to your partner because you did something stupid that wasn't part of the drill. Might have been alive, it might have been in the moment, it might have been pretty cool,
Hmm.
but it wasn't what you were cultivating, it wasn't what you were
Right.
developing and trying to hone.
I
We're
have
working on.
I have assistants who test me fairly regularly with that. Like we're supposed to be demonstrating something,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll go off demonstration,
Oh
right?
yeah, my students don't do that very much.
No.
No, I have a student, Josh, who was in my junior program. He's now in the adult program,
Uh,
and I'm always like, you gotta be very careful. Like we're going to the neck or something. Like no such thing as a light contact to the throat. And he kind of came in and goes boom, and I went bam, and I hit. Oh, I was like, you're 18 now, dude. You get punched. And he was like, okay, okay.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
I'm always like, even when I was in ed school, I sort of got into the enforcer program. You don't want to be a jerk because people kind of lose stuff. But Ed sort of assigned me and a few other people. New guy would come in, and sometimes somebody had previous training, quite a bit of previous training, and they would go into the more advanced levels. And they'd be like, "Yeah, come on in, let's move." And it was sort of my job, you sort of watch them, and someone kind of comes in and goes heavy-handed, bomb, and you're like, "We're going lighter, like let's just work nice and easy."
right,
And strike one, but boom. You gotta tone it down. Like that's not the point of this particular drill. That's
hmm,
something we do different time. But this drill is we're working a little bit lighter here. We're doing this. Strike two, strike three is just you just crack them one, and but you try to speak to them, and sometimes people go, oh crap, I'm sorry, like I didn't
right,
realize that. Okay, and they adjust. Some people never run into it. They got it figured out, and they're there just to learn and grow together. And some people literally are just don't realize it until you crack them one. They go, oh, I didn't. Oh, that's what. That, oh, sorry, I didn't know I was doing that. Okay, some people are in there to try to prove, and then that's a different story. Fortunately, we didn't have too much of that. It wasn't a big deal. Kind of weeding those people out, whether it was
right.
combative arts. There's a few people came in, but
All
usually
right.
not too much.
Okay. So I just realized we've been on for almost an hour and 20 minutes, man. I really appreciate your
Oh, well, that's fantastic. I've been having a great time. Like,
yeah. So okay, I forgot to ask you this: Is it Ledlow or Ledlow?
Ledlow.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
it's it's the only way you can make it easier to say is if you drop the W, but it's pretty easy.
Right.
But I don't ever worry about it because I screw people's names up all the time. I don't know what I'm saying, and people would they would get the name wrong or something. Mine's
Yeah.
not super difficult, but
Yeah.
it is pretty easy. But it's tough because there's other names that are difficult.
All
So it
right.
is Ledlow.
Okay. So
Ledlow.
let's wrap up with this.
Yep.
The move to Canada, was it a huge impact personally, professionally, or was it all
All
seamless because of who you were with?
all all of the above.
Ah,
So Catherine and I, my wife Catherine, we're in it together. We do really well when we're together.
yeah,
When we're apart longer, we tend to get on each other's nerves a bit more. We get back and we're like, "Rrr." But when we're together, like everything is locked together.
nice,
We're fantastic.
nice.
So moving here was good. I like Winnipeg. It's cold. Like we're hit winter. Winter was a little bit late this year, but we went from like kind of warm, like maybe a zippy, and you're kind of fine. I was riding my bike to snow, and it was like, bike's up. I'm done. I'm like, I don't have a winter bike. I'm done. Professionally, and I think especially as a martial artist, we'll skip some of the other intermediate stuff, but the two ones for me, I like being here. I like the people here. It's a nice community. Winnipeg is fairly isolated. We're closer to some U.S. cities than we are to other major Canadian cities.
Okay.
But you know, it's one of those things like Winnipeg. Why would you go to Winnipeg? Well, because my wife was born here and her family's here. Oh, it's actually a pretty nice place. So everybody who's
Right.
visited has been like, that's actually pretty nice. I tell them to come in the summer. It was really gorgeous in the summer. Um, and it's cold, but you just put a park on, and it's like a lot of other places. You just bundle up and you do it. But it is one of the things of going into martial arts. So it really changes the dynamic. And you think, well, no one's ever going to do that because I've been training in Southern California for however many years, where it's nice. And or you're in Miami. Well, it's not too oh, there's a hurricane, but other than that, it's it's not too
Right.
cold or
Hey,
we don't
man,
deal
it
with that.
was 61 the other day. You kidding?
We were like go into Fahrenheit. We're like 27 today. It's fairly warm. I think we warmed up to 32. We warmed up
Yeah.
to freezing. Um, so, and we're just going to keep going down. We're going to go down to minus 40. We go down to about minus 40 in the winter, which is minus 40 in Fahrenheit and Celsius are the same. So or might as well be. So
Oh,
it's
man.
cold. So we talk about that thing. If you're on ice, you got a stability, and I like to train with the heel up, and it's one of the things that I tell us too. Is like this is cultivation. You're learning how to access the power in your leg to stand this way. How you stand in a real altercation is something entirely different.
Mhm.
You're going to have to fit in not just to who the person is, but how you feel in the day and where you are. If you're wearing
Right.
big snow boots and you've got a parka on with mitts on, and you got to deal with somebody. Yeah, fighting with gloves, all of a sudden, you got big mitts on. That's kind of the same thing. Or you might have to grab that way. You judo, you've got to deal with grabbing onto a parka and using that to throw somebody, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gi, or a Taijutsu gi. All that stuff comes into it, and how you move. Well, that big fancy footwork, gone. So you might have to be doing a lot more head movement that you might find in like boxing.
Mhm.
All of those things kind of come into there, and it really started changing how I taught and how I approached martial arts
Right.
individually.
And all those things, all those things you consider them to be Jeet Kune Do, or
Yes
what's
and no.
your okay?
I think it's a bit of a trick question because Bruce Lee started with Wing Chun and then
Right.
Jeet Kune Do. Jerry Poteet, Kempo under Ed Parker, like a lot of the guys from LA, and then Jeet Kune Do. Me, Kung Fu under Ed Monahan and a bunch of other stuff, and then Jeet Kune Do. So I
Yeah.
got it after I already knew how to fight.
Right.
I knew how to move. I'd proven it. I'd already done it. A lot of guys like, you go to a bit of ring. It's like, dude, I got friends I fought harder than your guy you got in the cage with. Um, but then that's what Bruce was doing. Bruce knew how to fight already, and then was elevating that
Mhm.
and refining movement. But the movement was sort of understood, and my understanding of all the guys who came into the Chinatown School in LA, Dan and Jerry and everybody else that was there, they all had a background. They all
Right.
understood some of the basic movements. So it's kind of two. Can you do it without it? Is the training specifically from there? For me, I think it is a little bit different,
Mhm.
but I also think I say that, but I also have all the other stuff there. And I think the Jeet Kune Do mindset, you can go move around with somebody else that's a different martial artist
Right.
and learn from them, which is the old MMA before MMA became a thing. Like I remember when it was being coined as a phrase, and we are like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean MMA?" Like when the sport was being birthed.
Mhm.
Um, I was in LA training around. Nobody used really the MMA. You just trained with this guy who had a background in something, and you trained with that
Right.
guy. And
Right.
you just shared, like everybody
Yeah.
shared. Like you have a background. You train with Dan. I train with Jerry. We just get together and we just start moving. It's like, oh, that was really
Right.
cool. What is
Yeah.
that? Like, how did you catch me with? Again, that's how I learned a lot of stuff. I came in and I would do a punch kick combo, and then hmm, do it again, you get caught again, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I'm doing something dumb. Let me let me present this again and see if I can figure out what stupid thing I'm doing that you're catching me on.
Mhm.
I think that's there. I think a lot of the martial artists today, not all of them, but a lot of them are trying to do just too much, just glossing over the surface of it and not diving into something and not giving themselves a
Right.
base of something.
Yeah.
There's no depth or substance into something. While I train in a ton of other things, I
But
always
Joe,
had somebody. I
but
had somebody guiding me through the whole thing.
that's because they're already too dangerous.
Yeah, they're already too dangerous because I already, I know a Bilji and a front snap kick to the groin. Great. What happens when you miss?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, everybody misses. You think that shot's going to land? You have no real experience in my mind, because I've missed and I've hit people, and it did not have the effect that I thought it was going to have because
Mhm.
oh
Right.
shit, like there's and you never know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
You might think, oh, this big strong looking guy, bang, he falls down. You this skinny strong guy over here, bang, oh shit, I'm into a different world now.
Yeah. Yeah. All
uh
right, man.
I love the thing I love is, and I appreciate you doing this and reaching out, and not everybody's going to follow suit with it, I don't think, but uh I say, well, when I was in LA, and again, it's through Ed and all the people I was trained there was a camaraderie. It wasn't a division. It was you trained, and really, nobody gave a shit what you trained in.
Right.
Oh, you're JKD, you're this, you're that, you're boom, you're boom. We want to
Right.
know if it worked. We want to know if
Right.
you were a good person.
Right.
We want to know if you want to go a few rounds.
Hmm.
You want to move around? Come on, let's go move around. I'm gonna go learn
Right.
something. You're gonna learn something.
Yeah.
That to me is how it should be, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I mean, so imagine that within the JKD clan, right? That, well,
I don't
nobody
care.
cares,
It's not there.
right? Nobody cares what your lineage is. Let's just move around.
Yeah,
Let's see how we can be of benefit to each other. So,
I would like more of that. Um, it's I think part of it is just, again, it goes in the lineage thing. They were all people. They're
mhm,
all you and I. We had our training partners. They were all the first generation guys. Were all training partners.
mhm,
They're gonna have their ups and downs as human
mhm.
beings and with their own fallibles, and it's tough because then it runs into the founding of Jeet Kune Do and the
Yeah.
division go here and there,
Yeah.
and it's a tough deal. And I think as second generation guys, we have to start looking at bringing it back together, and
Right.
hopefully pass down to our people, our third generation people, to bond more,
Yeah.
um, and to but maintaining whatever it is that we got. And I think that would be the really cool thing of, Bruce talked to the individual, and everybody, all those guys got something different. They all move a little bit the same, but then as they continue to their personal journeys, they all kind of moved in their own direction, did their own thing,
Right. Yeah.
which is fine. I like,
Yeah.
good on you.
And
I'm
none
doing
of
the
them,
same thing.
and
You're doing the same thing,
right,
but
none of them were
then
perfect,
no. But
you
then
know?
how do we maintain? You maintain whatever. Maybe because I was really good at one thing and you were really good at something else, then we pass that down to our students, and then they're able to go back together, and then they can both share it, and then they can. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I think that the whole thing, I remember I did and I love Jeet Kune Do broadcast about meeting your heroes, when what they call the drug letters came out, and it's like, all right, so now we discovered that he wasn't perfect. We should never have been thinking in those terms in the first place,
No, no. That thing.
right?
I I everybody's sort of surprised and shocked, and I was like, did you listen to Bruce Lee talk? Did you
Yeah,
watch him? Have you read any? Like, I'm not the historian guy, but like
yeah.
he was there, and he was in the middle of Hollywood. This was the '70s
In Hollywood.
in Hollywood.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they were all like way more than he was, and he was like, "Let's go!" Like, oh, what, he did
Hmm.
some coke? Like, people in Coca Cola, it's called Coca Cola because they used to have cocaine in it. They
Right.
talk about snuff, with in Europe. Well, that was they were snorting coke.
Hmm.
Like these. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't. Would he do it today? I don't think he'd do it today. Um, but back then, it was just,
Right.
here, look, it's like taking people who have a Red Bull or Monster Energy drink.
Hmm. Yeah. I
He
like
was
Tim
doing.
Tackett's approach. Tim Tackett was like, yeah, well, so,
Yeah, I
and that
know.
was it.
It's like,
Right. Yeah.
again, I like exactly what you said, Dwight. 100% agree with you. Like, he's human. I otherwise you're going to be judging me harshly too, and it's like,
Hmm.
for any little thing that I've done wrong in my
Yeah.
life, and I've done plenty of stupid stuff as we all do. Um,
Yeah,
just
well,
be
but
proud of that.
I'll tell you one thing you didn't do stupid. That family of yours. I love that
Nope,
picture. I love the story,
that's the one
right?
thing I did do really really great.
Good for
I've been
you.
really fantastic. Catherine has been amazing through all of this. We just keep powering through everything.
Nice.
My son and my daughter are are really amazing. Um, I understand what I can bring as a martial artist. Like when my son was born, I was like, oh, I get it. I will hurt someone really, really badly
Right.
now. Like
Yeah.
it's a whole different ball
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
So yeah. To end, if are we at the end? All right, you got more
Yeah.
questions? I'll
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
because dude, I'll talk forever.
Hey, no,
This
we'll
will be
do
like
this
a
again.
3 hour. It'll be a
Right.
three
Well, no, no,
hour
no.
one.
Because somebody's going to go, man, they talk so much about family and relationship. Where's all the technical Jeet Kune Do stuff? So we'll have to
Dude,
do it
I'll
again.
give you. I'll end you with technical. So you want to know how family and technical stuff is? I do this to my students all the time. So emotional content really important. I would say, all right, so you're pissed off, and think of the last time you were in a rage, right? And this affects training and how people train. And this is, I can look at people and go, they don't train right. They
Mhm.
don't move right. They don't do it right. They don't have a good outlook on it. Forget about what the movement is, just the outlook on how they approach training, martial training. So you think about the last time you were really pissed off, like someone, something just in an absolute rage. Great. Put that on the other person. It's all directed back at you.
Right.
Now that's who you got to deal with. Make them bigger, faster, stronger than you, and in a rage. Now, as a parent, someone's doing something to my kid. I am like, here's a check. Let's go. Well, you didn't fill out the amount. I don't care. Let's go. There is no amount that's too much. I will go. So when I train, I think, all right, I'm 6'1", 200 pounds. I can fight. If I'm in an absolute rage because you're trying to hurt my kids, I'm coming at you with something really scary. Okay, well, let me reverse that, put that all into somebody else and make them just as skilled as me, more skilled than me, bigger, faster, stronger. They're 6'2", 220 pounds, and they're 10 years younger than me, and they're protecting their kids.
Right.
Okay, now I'm cultivating. Whether or not I win or lose a fight, that's it. That's why you fight. But your cultivation, how you train, how you develop your skills, that's important. And I think this, whatever you're going to do, however you're going to approach the problem, solving the problem you need to actually look at the problem. The problem is big. If it's a dumb idiot guy who's weaker than you, that's I don't need to do that. That to me is not Jeet Kune Do. Jeet Kune Do is for skilled fighters to overcome another skilled fighter,
Right.
not to defend yourself from a dumb drunk who's stumbling and falling down and throwing giant windmaker haymakers. I've
Yeah.
seen those. That's nothing that's applying a little bit of skill.
All right.
But
Okay,
really
man.
fighting against someone who's threatening your life,
High level thought.
that's a high level thought.
I
So
love
you
it.
want to know what
I love
family
it.
does? In my mind anyway, that's what family does. And when I talk to my parents, they're like, oh, I'm in my 40s, and I've got a family, and I'm not really done any martial arts. I give them that scenario, and they go, I'm like, oh yeah, well, your kid is blah blah blah. Well, now I think about me grabbing your kid and slamming against the wall, and they're like, well, I will freaking kill you, and it's like, that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
You're a different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get a ton of my people come in, and we have that conversation, and they really go, oh, you're unlocking the potential you have inside of you and then increasing your efficiency and applying that potential to the problem. Part of that is emotional content, and
Right.
why are you fighting? And it changes the dynamic of, am I fighting for my ego? Well, we should take our ego out of this. And when you take your ego out, which I did in bouncing all the time, you take your ego out. I'm not part of the problem.
Mhm.
Or I take my need to be important out of the problem. Then you're just problem solving. Hey, what's going on, man? How can I help you? Guys
Yeah.
are always in situations, and why can you intercept in their intention? Is
I,
because you took your
I,
ego out of it.
Joel, you just that whole taking the ego out of it. You just gave a lot of people on Facebook a prescription for how.
Take it, yeah. if you need you, and if you're having a hard time taking your ego out of it, go over, glove up, and let someone punch you in the face. I remember going to people I remember calling some of my instructors and be like, "Yeah, I need to come out for a visit."
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting too cocky. I needed someone to humble me. Like, seriously, I remember going East Coast and training with people, and just flying out, be like, "Yeah, I'm just getting a little bit cocky. I need someone to check me a little bit." And
Right. Yeah.
I came back humbled.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap it up.
All right.
Thanks
Fantastic.
very much for
my
doing this.
recommendation is Ed.
Yeah. Okay.
It's fantastic.
I'll reach out to him. If I need your help, I'll get back in touch with you.
Absolutely.
But we will do this again. All right. Okay.
Fantastic.
Have a great weekend, man. Take care.
You too. Be well.
Alrighty.